Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to the second session. So now we're going to talk about an exciting session that we will look at who's actually at the control of the wheel. What does it mean? We're looking at the connectivity and how it helps on the mobility in general, but particularly we're focusing on automotive in this session. So I'm not going too much into details, so I just want to give you the information about who will be the speakers for this session. We have a full house of speakers from the industries, they're specialists, so we are very happy to have them, and so hopefully you will hear something very, let's say, exciting. And some of them actually have also the booth in MWC, so you will also have the chance to go and visit them directly and see what they're doing and get more information in the detail. So the session at the morning is divided in two areas. So we will have first two keynotes presentation, and then we will have a panel. So I don't want to waste too much time, but I want to just start and go in on the first keynote. So our first keynote is going to be from Coursey, which is the Vice President of AT&T Connected Solution. So I will ask, please, to give a warm welcome to Cameron, come on stage, and he will give you wonderful presentations about connected cars and connected solution. Cameron, thank you for it.
Thank you, Barbara. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you today. You know, one thing we all have in common is we had to use transportation to get here, right? And while you were using that transportation, even when you were walking after you got out of whatever you got out of, you wanted to be safe. You wanted to make sure you didn't get run over by anything, right? So what I want to talk to you about right now to kind of kick us off is what we call connected infrastructure. I'm going to use the term synonymous with intelligent transportation. And I'm going to use the United States as an example because while it's a little bit unique, each part of the world, it's kind of evolved in a similar fashion, this whole connected infrastructure or intelligent transportation. So let's just talk a little bit about the history of where we have been and then where we're going in this space. If we look at what we call vehicle-to-vehicle, it really started this whole connected infrastructure idea. And it's been a bumpy road for vehicle-to-vehicle, for vehicle-to-infrastructure, the next phase of it. We've really evolved this space at a different pace than the cellular networks have evolved in the past. And that's been a real challenge, actually, between the industries. The automotive industry is on one life cycle. The cellular industry is on a different life cycle. It's truly been a challenge, and we hope that we're moving into a place where there's more unity and ability to work together. And you see that in this evolution, starting with vehicle-to-vehicle, really in the 1990s. This was based upon a technology called it's direct to the vehicle based upon a Wi-Fi solution, not necessarily a cellular-based solution. And that really didn't go very far in the industry. It really didn't get enough backing, enough use. So the industry over the next 15 years looked at other use cases from just vehicle to vehicle, looking at vehicle to infrastructure. Think about traffic lights, the ability for a vehicle to communicate with traffic lights, to be able to make sure that when it gets to an intersection, you don't have to wait too long for a green light, things like that. But then vehicle to pedestrian is another area that was looked at. And this is really how you can protect pedestrians that are near the roadways. You know, in 2021, I believe, there was a study done in the United States by the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. And it showed that deaths went up actually by 12.5% from 1920 to 2021 from 2020. And That's not good. We're going in the wrong direction when we go that way. So protecting pedestrians became very important as a mission. So over 15 years, the industry was starting to work on this. Fairly recently, though, the industry decided, hey, let's look at cellular technologies rather than this dedicated short-range communication. Let's see if we can bring the technologies together a bit more. So in 3GPP, work was done to provide an ability for all these same capabilities to be used over the cellular protocols. But this was still in a kind of a short range, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to intersection, vehicle to pedestrian use case. It was recognized, though, and today we're in an era where we're talking about cellular, vehicle to anything, but really vehicle to network has become also important because, at least in the United States, there's not as much spectrum that is being allocated for this use case as there used to be. So cellular needs to be used to augment what happens in this short-range communication area. So that's what's really happened to evolve in the transportation industry. At the same time, the cellular networks have evolved on a pace of, let's say, about every 10 years, we go to a new G. So we started out with 2G and 3G in this era. 10 years later, right now, the majority of the vehicles that are connected over 4G, with a move in the next couple years into 5G for longevity purposes, because those networks will be around longer. But again, you can see that as we move into these new technologies, we need to make sure that we stay in pace with what's happening really on the slide that I showed right before this. So right now, the standards have been specified for both 4G and 5G, vehicle to anything. The future is really, though, in the 5G space, where we can take advantage of advanced network services, quality of service, things that allow us to provide mission-critical delivery of communications, like safety messages. So that shows the two industries and how they've been evolving. And really now we are coming together, the public and the private sectors in the United States. It's become recognized through an Infrastructure Act that more funding needs to be made available for this whole connected infrastructure space. Well, that's being done by the federal government allocating money to different states and departments of transportation. But that's really not in a unified fashion. It's not something that's easily or quickly going to provide a nationwide solution. So we really think that we need to move into a model that is more like what we've done in the United States for FirstNet, maybe something called SafetyNet or something, that would really enable a nationwide network to support safety-based solutions, not only for this 5.9 gigahertz, which is an unlicensed band that is used for some of the short-range communication, but also for the cellular frequencies that would augment that. Again, safety is very critical, very important, but also making sure that we make the most efficient use of our roadways. And for the private sector, it's also this whole move to software-defined vehicles, which is happening at a rapid pace. The need for these vehicles to be connected all the time. The movement towards more electric vehicles and the need to find charging stations. And finally, as we move eventually into the autonomous vehicle space, connectivity will grow in importance. So the ability to use one radio to provide all of these services would be very good for the automotive industry and for the whole public sector as well. And there are some really important use cases that everybody is working on, and we hope that both the public and the private sector find valuable. Again, this whole pedestrian safety along the roadway is very important no matter where you go in the world. Also, traffic optimization. You know, it's really costs a lot of money to build new lanes on roads, and sometimes it's not even possible. And yet the number of vehicles continues to grow, and the need to make sure that the traffic is managed efficiently, especially in a world where we're trying to be more sustainable, right? So the idea of having also corridors, not only for consumers to travel, but for supply chains to move very rapidly around countries and nations is very important to have those kinds of corridors. And finally, public transport, where we really think maybe autonomous will take over first, but you again need all these other capabilities to come along with it. So we see that we are really at an inflection point here in the industry, a place where there have been some successes in the past, but there's a lot more opportunities for the future as we bring these two industries together, automotive and cellular. And I hope that this has sparked some ideas for you for the panel discussion that's going to come, and maybe you'll have some great questions for them as well. So, we think that cellular accelerates the future of connected infrastructure, and really 5G is the way to do it. There's a lot of discussion about satellite service to augment that in areas where maybe you can't build cell sites today, but you could have cellular connection through a satellite. So there's a lot of direct to cellular kind of solutions that are in the making. Some of them don't require any changes to the devices at all. They can work on existing cellular devices. Others may require different frequency bands and different capabilities. But this is a place where, again, the industry is coming together to create a better coverage for all of the transportation solutions. 5G is the key to it all. All right. With that, I'm going to close it and give it back to Barbara. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cameron. It's wonderful. So we have a very great start of the day. So we are going now on the next presentations. So we're going to have Eva Rudin, or Rudin. I will ask her to pronounce her name better. She's actually the VP Mobile Connectivity Solution of Thales, but she will be representing on those stage the Software Republic. So Eva, if you want to come on stage, and she will explain what Software Republic is. Thank you very much, Eva.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to explain in a few minutes what this Software Republic is doing to bring innovation to the mobility ecosystem. The Software Republic was created to address the new challenges of the mobility ecosystem, and specifically address challenges around the sustainability and the cybersecurity. It has 6 founding partners: Renault Group, ST Microelectronics, Dassault System, Orange, Thales, and Eviden. The purpose of this creation was to achieve the mobility revolution together through a sharing of complementary knowledge and capabilities, achieving thus faster innovation and getting a shorter time to market. We also invite startups to join our different innovations so that we can really capture the best ideas that we find in the market and, again, accelerate that time to market. One of the examples of innovation is the Mobilize Powerbox, which is an electric vehicle charging station that is intelligent, bidirectional between the car and the home. You can get electricity in the 2 directions. It is, of course, connected and cyber secured. And this one is no longer one of the projects. It has become reality. It went into production a couple of weeks ago. After 2 years of existence of the Software Republic, we wanted to show what kind of innovations we can bring that will impact positively the user experience. So you can think here about solutions such as biometric access management, having adapted profiles for the driver recognition, and advanced safety solutions. Among the 20 innovations that you will be able to see in the Human First Vision, that is the name of this initiative, 8 are already being developed, and the purpose is that they're going to become industrialized. So I would like to invite you, after this session, to go and see yourself and try this vision of mobility that we are proposing on the Human First Vision car that you will have right behind you. So please don't miss that opportunity to see what smart mobility can bring to our personal lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for this. Yeah, maybe if you want to see it, just go down there on the booth of GSMA so you can experience. So now we're going to the panel. So it's going to be a very interesting panel with a lot of panelists. But before we kickstart the panel, I want to invite first on the stage our moderator, so Sawant Singh from Markets and Markets. And he will have a couple of slides before we kickstart the panel. So Sawant, over to you, please.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Very good morning to you all, and a warm welcome to our panel discussion. Before we start the panel discussion, and I welcome our panelists, let me just set the scene by taking 2 slides in just a few minutes. So, and it's very interesting, if you look all around today, you see a lot of 5G, 6G, satellite connectivity. What does this all mean? What this all means is we are heading to what I would call a world of connected living solutions. Just like 2G brought cellular, 3G brought data, 4G brought video, 5G is bringing what I call isolated community solutions. So, for example, connected factories, 5G factories, 5G football stadiums. And by end of this decade, we'll see 5G connected with it over 20,000 satellites that we're going to launch. So that brings you to what I call a connected living solution. So we as humans will be connected at a personal level, at a community level, and at a city level. Now, what does that mean to the future car? So we in Markets and Markets believe that the future of car, a connected car, is that the car becomes an element of a connected living solution. I was once discussing with the CDO of BMW, and I said to him, I asked him, I said, what's your technology roadmap? And he said, it's very much about developing some connected car services, software-defined vehicle, but the end product really is that the car becomes that element of a connected living solution. So you'll see these kind of services coming in from connected workplace, connected smart energy solutions, and OEMs we expect will generate anywhere between $500 to $600 per car, which is additional revenue to what they generate. So that's the key item of discussion of our panel today. So let me welcome our panelists today. So first we have Usman. Usman, if you don't mind coming over. So Usman works for, he's the Assistant Vice President at AT&T. He's actually worked with GM, and those of you who might know about the connected car services, if you ask me, the best OEM is GM OnStar, and I believe you've also taken GM OnStar globally.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you. Usman, please have a seat.
Thank you for having me.
Usman and I share one passion, that is biking, but I think he's even better than me, even has a pilot license. So, Usman,
That's
welcome.
motorbiking.
Wow, brilliant, excellent. Our next panelist is Suman Sarah. He's Global Vice President, Automotive Product and Portfolio Platform Management at HARMAN. He's an engineer at heart, and I believe he is also very good as a handyman and is often sourced as a handyman from the family. He also has very impressive 11 patents to his name. So welcome, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Be here.
Our next panelist, Eva. You've heard from Eva, but just a little fun thing about Eva. Eva worked with Renault Nissan for something like 16 years, Eva. 11 of those was in the internal combustion engine,
Yep.
and that's going down, right? And then Eva moved into geoscience, seismic activities, and that's also going down, right? With new energy fuels coming in. But glad to see Eva now is with Thales, where she works in defense and security. And I think with all these geopolitical tensions and what we see with the growth of digital, I don't think that'll go down in the near future. Thank you, Eva. Thanks for joining. Then we have Serafino. Serafino is from Volvo Cars. Serafino was an economist in regulatory, but really has transitioned into digital. And Italian, but lived in England for many years. and then after Brexit, you moved to Sweden. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the association there is a bit quick, but yes.
Yeah, excellent,
So,
Serafino.
so
Thank you. I
thank
look
you.
forward to hearing from you on what digital regulatory things we can see in the future. And saving best for the last, we have Paul Miller, who is the CTO of Wind River Systems, where he heads the technology strategy of the company. Over 3 decades of experience in the telecom sector, and he looks after the 5G cloud, the edge, as well as 5G. So warm welcome to all of you. Thank you very much. So maybe I'll just start with the first very open question. So I talked about we moving into a connected living world, car becoming an element of a connected living solution. What does the panel think? Am I wrong? Am I right? What's the direction of a connected car in the future?
I think, personally, you spoke about software-defined vehicle. They are not different than digital device, but on wheels. All right, that will require consistent and reliable connectivity at all times. And I saw, 12 different segments or verticals you indicated. So the vehicle of the future needs to not only talk to other vehicles, but it also needs to talk to the verticals that exist in this digital ecosystem. So definitely I agree with you. The vehicle of the future would be a living thing with all these verticals inclusive.
Thank you. Excellent. And you?
I tend to agree. I think if you look at how the world has changed, digitalization was something that really upended a lot of industries and the working models over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. And COVID acted as a big accelerant. When you think about automotive and think about how we travel, how we are on the go, the consumers now, they expect that connectivity should be ubiquitous. They expect the same experiences they have in their home, in their living space, in their workplace. So I think it's really coming together in terms of how connected mobility enables humanity in motion to offer things that are safer, that are smart, that are sustainable. And I think we all have a role to play to bring that vision to life.
Excellent. Eva, anything from your side to add?
Yeah, I would say that the remote car control and monitoring is something that I think more and more users will expect. There are many sides to that. It can be unlock the car remotely. It can be managing, lock unlock of the car, the climate control, any user preferences. But more concretely, and maybe sooner to come, is the digital car key, which is not only a question of seamlessly accessing the vehicle, but it's also a way to be able to share the car, the key in a digital way with your family, for example, or even opening up to new business use cases as for rental services who will be able to manage those digital car keys and share them just through the phone. So it's all about connectivity and creating that ecosystem to make things smoother for the user.
With the amount of car thefts we have in London, that'll be a really good use case for sure. Paul or Serafino, anything to add to it?
Go ahead. I think it's interesting because certainly the vision is the right one. A connected live is where we are going as societies. I work in regulatory affairs, so maybe I come from a different perspective than you guys. What I see is also that there's still a lot of work to be done to create the cooperative environment to develop some of the solutions that can make car makers able to deploy safely cars on the roads. So we would like to see not only technology roadmaps, but also a policy roadmap about a smart mobility approach. It was interesting, just to close, to hear your points with Software Republic, those type of initiative. Our colleague, the first keynote speaker, talked about the US and possibly a national safety infrastructure of some kind. I think these are things that are now, becoming so important to get it right, because then we can have the future that we kind of like looking for.
So, Serafino, just on that note, I normally find regulations are always behind trends. Are there any specific regulations that we will see which will impact the car of the future? And what's your view on autonomous regulations? Are they there for us to have autonomy on the roads?
So, at the moment, technology is ahead of the regulations. In some regions more than others. But broadly speaking, if you want to have level 4 or level 5 automation on the road at the moment, we don't have the rules that allows us to do it safely. So we need the development of these rules. These are developed, there is a forum within the UN that actually is responsible for developing car safety regulation. And we have, in the past years, made new regulations on cybersecurity, on software update, for example. But there's still harmonization to be done. Software update, I just close on that one, is a good example because we are developing the connectivity capabilities, but now we have a patchwork of national rules on how we can use software updates to fix bugs, provide new services. So we would like to see a lot more harmonization on that kind. Unless that happens, I think it's difficult because we are kind of like global car makers. We have to produce in few sites cars that go everywhere. Yeah. So we really need to have some foresight on the regulatory environment.
Well, that's the problem with the car industry. We can't even agree to a same plug, right? So definitely, I think regulations need to play a role. Paul, maybe a question for you. Like we have Apple iOS, Android, and we know some car companies like Volkswagen developing the iOS solutions. So do you see these kind of proprietary solutions being developed by OEMs, or will they adopt something like a Google Android system in cars?
I think we'll see an evolution. You know, we started our parent company, Aptiv, worked with Volvo to create the first Android automotive operating system in December of 2019 to improve the in-cabin experience for their customers. And really the initiative behind that was to enable Volvo, through our driving of the integration and development that happened with that program, to deliver their own differentiated value, right? So the user experience for the infotainment system, driven through an Android operating system, that's a contemporary way that these things are done. However, as we look forward, we're going to see an evolution. What we learned through that experience is you really need a optimized hardware platform that produces up integration in the vehicle. You know, moving from 150, 200 ECUs down to 5 or 6, compressed platforms, and then moving the software layer on top of that, not only to a software-defined vehicle, as we talk about it quite frequently, but one that embraces a cloud-native architecture. And then finally, advanced applications like ADAS and infotainment that reside on top of that. This typically means that rather than just picking an OS, you're picking an architecture for the vehicle that may have a mixed criticality hypervisor and a safety-certified operating system for safety-certified requirements for braking systems and engine management, and then less safety-critical things running on Linux or Android as you need. And it's a heterogeneous environment that you have inside the vehicle that enables this to happen. And once you've made that transformation in the software-defined vehicle and adopted cloud-native principles in there, we already know that on the edge of the 5G network and in the core of the carrier network, they're deploying their assets on a similar architecture using cloud-native principles and containers. Now we finally enable what Cameron was talking about, or cellular V2X, where we can do compute offload and real OTA practically into the car, and enable cellular V2X for advanced safety and comfort and convenience features that people will really enjoy in the automobiles. And I think we're at the right technology inflection point where you have the understanding from the contemporary consumer that you mentioned, driven by this intersection of technology. You have 5G and you have an evolution of a software-defined vehicle happening. This is really what's bringing to the forefront the possibility of doing this. For any of the audience here that wishes, you can stop by our booth over in Hall 2. We actually have a software-defined vehicle there and demonstrating how this is done. It's pretty exciting technology now.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Maybe coming back to my second slide where I talked about different services. So maybe, Suman, one for you. Tell us a little bit about HARMAN's, and it's great to see one supplier next door. I haven't seen many auto suppliers, so thanks for HARMAN for coming and exhibiting today. Tell us a little bit about your automotive connectivity services. And from the 12 services I showed, are there any where you see there is more potential in the short to medium term?
I think from a living community and the living society perspective, across the different use cases, I see a very strong connection between 3 and 11. I don't know if we are displaying that. Also, as a company, HARMAN also has connected living, right? For instance, Step 7, which is our lifestyle division, Connected City. This is where I think the combination of what Cameron was saying, the V2N, how the automotive industry connects with smart cities, the infrastructure-assisted technologies, and of course the vision to bring the connected mobility. So HARMAN, from an automotive standpoint, we truly see connectivity as the fundamental fabric on which these experiences are conceived and delivered. We're very consumer focused, coming from a Samsung perspective, which is our parent company. Consumer experiences, automotive grade is the mantra through which we go through this journey of identifying, ideating, and then nurturing these use cases that solve challenges not for today, but also then empower our OEMs with whether it's software-defined vehicle architecture, contributions through, let's say, Eclipse Foundation. We're actually publishing some of the container runtimes as well as edge services that bring those use cases to life.
Excellent, thank you. And Usman, your views? Where do you see the use cases which can be
Yeah.
monetized?
So what I would say is, as the panel said, all these 12 different verticals, they are actually part of the connected car ecosystem. At the same time, we need to find ways, how we can really have the car to communicate with all these verticals individually. And in return, those verticals can also communicate back to the car. So for me, if you really ask what is the most important, I would say, the safety and the convenience services to start with are the most important to give our customers the peace of mind so they can really move forward from this journey into next journey of the new verticals.
Excellent, okay. Thank you. Maybe a provocative question. Let's talk about autonomy and autonomous. Personally, I think we won't have level 5 for another 10 years, possibly even more. We could see level 4. So maybe a question for the panel here. Do you believe we will have level 5 autonomy, or will we see level 2, 2.5, maybe 3, 4 before? And what use cases and business models can we expect?
Well, I can start, level 2 and 2.5 already exist in US. And some of the level 4 being AT&T, we're already supporting on our network and slowly moving, towards the test trials for level 5. So we really have to divide a level 5 into multiple segments. For example, trucking is one segment. Robo-taxis or the robo-cabs, running around in your downtown area is a second segment. And the consumer autonomous vehicle is a third segment. In 2022, there was a truck driver shortage in US, which was around 250,000 truck drivers. That is going to grow to 1 million truck drivers by 2030. So there is a huge push from the government, and they are injecting a lot of money, as Cameron indicated in his previous presentation, that how we can really create those autonomous lanes to start with the autonomous trucking and also the robo-taxis, within the downtown. I think, this is just a matter of the regulatory things, how soon they can come into play. And as AT&T, we're already actually performing trials with some of the level 4 and level 5.
So do we see level 5 in 10 years' time?
I would
Can I drive from London to Edinburgh?
You don't have to drive that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Good point. Anybody else to add? Yeah, please, Serafino.
Just to follow up, I think, in terms of what we can do now, we are around level 3. First, I think the whole level division was something came out of, I think, SIE standard many years ago.
Correct.
And it's a good way to sort of like broadly identify a sort of like roadmap. But then it's not exactly going to be like those levels. It's going to be more discrete. A bit like, from 2G to 3G, you had Edge and others. So system get sort of like, and function get added that makes it more sort of like progressive. At the moment, in a lot of countries, we don't have the rules to be able to even test automated driving system. But now there is a group of experts that is working on this within this multi-stakeholder forum of the UN. And we're going to have rules by 2026, 27. So I think by 28, 29, we will see. I think, and just to I think a very good point, Usman, was the reference to trucks. Because we always talk about cars, but actually the huge potential for level 5, some level 5 use cases, is the transportation of goods.
Yeah.
where you have a lot of situation where it may be dangerous for the driver to transport the goods. You can have a sort of like more controlled environment on sites. I think that part, we may see use cases on the road before we see them for vehicles.
Understood. Excellent. Thank you. I noticed when I was looking at your profiles, you all have one thing in common. You're all working on 5G. And I know Cameron's talked about 5G. So maybe a question for you. What are the killer use cases of 5G that we can expect within the car of the future?
I guess I can start. The company I work for, Wind River, is the world's leading provider of Open RAN infrastructure. Excuse me. We've been heavily involved in the deployment of 5G globally. And we really think a couple of things are necessary to enable some of these use cases we're talking about. One is that the adoption of Open RAN as a way to deploy 5G versus the proprietary appliances that we used previously enables the edge of the carrier network to become fully virtualized. And once that virtualized platform is there for things like Open RAN that hosts the 5G radio infrastructure, you now have a highly distributed compute system that enables you to host new virtualized applications at the far edge of the network. And so when we start talking about killer apps, your question, if we look at the connected devices, whether they're coming from industrial, medical, automotive, aerospace, we pick automotive for this panel, and we take things like CV2X, now you have actual compute horsepower at the far edge of the network that you can leverage for new applications. And this represents new revenue stream possibilities, as Cameron indicated, for service providers, where now I can take things like, I'm pulling up to an intersection and I want to see on my heads-up display or dashboard a camera feed from a car that's across the intersection. That has to hairpin at a local tower, and that means you need a piece of the application sitting at that tower, and you need a low latency connection. And with the IoT device count that we're talking about, this is really only enabled by 5G. And there are other examples like updating maps dynamically or increasing the in-cabin experience through notifications of construction events that are happening or traffic events that are happening. Vehicle to infrastructure activities to avoid pedestrian impacts, right? All of these things are happening in a low latency environment. Yeah. And low latency means you don't have the ability to come from the vehicle all the way back up to a public cloud and back down again. You've got to do that with a piece of the application sitting at the far edge of the network. And so some of these applications I described, a contemporary consumer would love to have these, right? But it really required the software-defined vehicle and the architecture we talked about, a modern 5G network that's using virtualized compute at the edge so that we can bring these applications into that final architecture. And we're just now in 2024 on the cusp of being able to do that.
Yeah. So if I can add, so I would really invite folks, Paul, thank you for setting this up. Some of these applications we actually have ready to basically deploy. So we really see connectivity, like I said, that's sort of the key pivotal point in bringing these things to life. And SDV and some of the tailwinds like electrification and software-defined vehicle architectures, that's happening right now. So we just announced a product, today, Ready Connect, in partnership with Qualcomm. Essentially, that's a TCO that enables connectivity, and our aim is really to democratize connectivity. So it's not limited to, let's say, only a premium vehicle, but when you think about how do you prevent deaths, how do you, do your part in society as a good corporate Samaritan, towards Vision Zero, how do you bring that mobility to be safe, sustainable, and smart? So some of these things are happening today. And the fundamental thing is having the readiness, the quality of the network, having use cases that are going to be enabled. I mean, we talked about autonomy, having something that is 5G slicing, and having a network slice that is dedicated, let's say whether it's platooning of trucks. And I concur with some of the examples that have been shared. Last month I was with a couple of ministries in Japan. For them, this is the number one thing in transportation, is autonomy for moving people, moving goods. And I do see some of this will be only made possible because of 5G.
And I believe, Suman, you sit on the board of 5G Automotive Association?
I do.
And are there any particular areas of focus for them right now?
I think we are looking at, in partnership with our OEMs, MNOs, we're looking at how connectivity, both long range, and short range that Cameron mentioned earlier. For us to bring scale, we see the long-range communication as a way to scale safety-critical applications or safety mission-critical applications to life. So that's one of the areas that we are trying to seek collaboration as an industry, as an ecosystem. The other things are also trying to provide the last mile connectivity with things around NTN. Right now, given the, let's say, availability of the constellations, we might start with narrowband IoT and focus on, let's say, I wouldn't say e-call, maybe e-notification, because there's only so much payload you can carry over the current narrowband IoT band, but that would really set the foundation of what comes next. Can I make a video call? Can I see a three-dimensional view of if there was an accident or a situation, and this information needs to be relayed to a command and control center which is far off, and you are in a situation where you don't have any 5G. How would that happen? So these are some of the things that we're currently looking at, among other technical things like marshalling of autonomous vehicles or AVP or AVM. So I'd say those are top of mind.
Excellent, excellent. And maybe just on that line, do we see satellite connectivity, and do we expect every car in the future will have a satellite antenna? Do you think that'll happen in the future?
So from a HARMAN standpoint, like I said, when I said democratizing connectivity, we're actually trying to work with the right ecosystem partners to really lower the barrier to entry into this. So again, this is not about Ready Connect, but when you do get a chance, come take a look at the product. Yeah. The product is already future-proof to the point where without changing the TCU or telematics, the same integrated antennas, we will be able to offer that to an OEM.
Excellent. Good. Serafino, a question for you. The European Union is getting over-regulated as part of a criticism. There's the Digital Act coming in. Any impact to the auto industry, or is it mainly for the Silicon Valley companies?
So cars now, until sort of like 10 years ago, all the regulation came from the car world, so to speak.
NCAPs.
The multi-stakeholder forum of experts that work with the testing companies and so forth. Now, there is all this new digital regulation. At the very least, we are looking at it and whether it impacts us or not. The Digital Service Act, DMA, is not much for us. We partner with some of the companies that are targeted, but it is for their business. For us, for example, obviously a lot more impact from the Data Act, which in effect requires now to design the car with an open data access, sort of like design, directive. Things like the AI Act, and of course, all the regulation around data protection. A lot more on security as well. Cybersecurity is growing, particularly for the whole ecosystem. We got our own cybersecurity standards for the vehicle, but now the EU has done a quite a good job in the last mandate to really put a sort of like a cybersecurity standard on everything around it. So, on the electricity networks, on the plug-in sort of like charging station. So it's getting better.
So maybe a follow-on question. So in my car, who owns my data?
You do.
I do. But what about...
You do in Europe and any other country that apply a data protection rule.
And what about the functioning of the vehicle? If I'm leasing a vehicle, who owns it? The leasing company or the OEM?
Sometimes it depends on the type of leasing relationship, but this is provided for. Ultimately, you have to look at the objective of this regulation are to protect the personal data of the user. Okay. So all the personal data is collected on the vehicle. We have to ask consent for the way we are going to process it, explain how we process it, and how we store it. And this now, since the GDPR has been a sort of like common practice that we've adopted like many other industries. The Data Act is a bit different because it extends to non-personal data. So now we have to, first the non-personal data, now also you own it as the driver, and you decide if we have to share it with someone else. So this is quite transformative.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting question. I'm glad, you brought this up. If we speak about today's world, the auto OEMs, they own the data, because there is a different data types, there's a telemetry data, there's the head unit data, there's the app data, and there is your personal data. Correct. So everything is kind of owned by auto OEMs, and how they distribute is their jurisdiction. But looking at your connected car as a living solution or entity, now these regulations are going to change, and it's already, they are in a process of remaking, because the vehicle needs to talk to those all 12 verticals, and the vertical needs to talk to them. And to Paul's point, some of the data sets and application needs to reside on the edge of the network or in the cloud-hosted environment. There's a good and great opportunity for many of the audience here, if they belong to the streaming services, app providers, location services, advanced network capabilities, or any other domain, where they can offer any type of competence. They will have access to some kind of data that will be made available publicly to all these entities.
Thank you, Usman.
But I think, if I may just add on this, what this means is also that we are going to see a transformation in the smart mobility ecosystem, because in effect, until now, we have data in silos, but we'll be able to pool data. In Europe, they are facilitating voluntary pooling of those data. So I think there is great potential there. Some of the obstacles we see today will be able to solve by pooling data together.
Excellent. Thank you. Maybe moving to one of my last questions now. Our panel is titled, Who's at the Wheel in the Connected Vehicle Revolution? So maybe if you look at the industry value chain and the ecosystem, who's driver, who's the co-driver, and who's sitting behind? Maybe starting with you, Eva. What's your views on this?
Yes, I'll go for the co-driver.
Okay, good.
Speaking of my company as being of one of those. So if you look at the co-driver is really the ones helping the OEMs to fulfill the smart mobility dream. There you have software providers, technology providers, bringing in expertise, knowledge, solutions to the ecosystem. And we see a lot of areas there. It can be, of course, the operating system of a car, the cybersecurity, which is an important one, connectivity becoming more and more important, including the satellite as well. And as a partner of that ecosystem, we can really see the emphasis, and I would say beyond connectivity that we've been talking about for quite a while, the focus is now more and more coming over on the cybersecurity topic. When we speak about everything being interconnected, that means that we need to have a heightened security level of what we do. We need to protect that data that is transiting between different areas. And when we think about smart mobility, it's not just the car. It's also connected to public transport, when we'll start doing sharing of cars, going towards public transport as well. Smart cities, the smart home. As I spoke about the digital car key, we can unlock the home with that. So everything is getting interconnected, and that is posing a lot of challenges both on regulation side and on cybersecurity side.
Excellent. Anybody else to comment on that?
I guess I could quickly comment. I really see our company Aptiv Wind River as a driver. When I look at what the company's produced, it's really industry leading with respect to a complete up-integrated solution for a software-defined vehicle, the best-in-class hardware, radar systems, sensors, sensor fusion, ADAS self-driving, the best cloud-native infrastructure, in fact, the only cloud-native infrastructure available in the industry, and trying to lead the industry with respect to this cellular V2X and 5G integration. We're really trying to bring the right complete system set of tools to an automotive OEM or to a service provider to enable this complete system to be built that we're talking about here today around connected vehicles.
Thank you.
I can quickly add, there was one thing common in all your 12 verticals, and that was connectivity. So as AT&T, we are developing world's best advanced and open and robust network that can serve the vehicles of the future. But at the same time, as the technology and the market demands is consistently advancing, I think, there is no one player that has answer to all the questions, and we have to work very closely with our customers and our partners to address on the emerging and the new market demands.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please.
I may have a different view on this. To me, I think the consumers are the force behind what is going to be, whether it's the evolution of technology, and technology can be a great equalizer, in terms of the transition that is happening right now from an ICE to, let's say, EVs, and then from an architecture, from zonal compute to central compute. But the consumers have come to expect their vehicles to be no different in terms of how they personalize their experiences. So there is, I think the consumer force is really the epicenter of a lot of what is yet to come. So whether they are in the driver's seat, the co-driver's seat, it will be dictated. And if you go maybe east, you will see vehicles that are being brought to market because that's what the consumers are demanding. Yeah. Maybe we don't see them here on the western side, but you go see east, you will see and
no, you're spot on. When I was at the IAA in Munich, the Chinese companies were not talking about 50 or 100 connected services, but 300 to 400 connected services, which was just amazing. And maybe a question for you, Suman. One of the trends we talk about is wellness, well-being. And I remember Hyundai talking about health and mobility. If you look at the iWatch, it's a wellness device. Do you see health and mobility coming together?
Very much so. I think as an extension of safety, when you think about well-being, we do look at how do we create that environment inside the cabin and outside the cabin. So of course, connectivity is how it's delivered, but we have a product called ReadyCare. ReadyCare is something that relies on a set of different capabilities from IR to radars to check the gaze of the driver, the drowsiness, whether the driver is attentive, and then provide predictive alerts to the driver and to the co-passengers to make sure that you are in control of your journey, and at any time and every time you are able to take on a safe path from point A to point B. So in the interest of time, I'll keep it short.
But could we see a health kiosk in the future in a car when I'm in autonomous mode? It tells me everything in the morning.
It gets into a little bit of regulatory areas, but some of the capabilities that we already have with ReadyCare, as an example, it's taking neuroscience, AI, and ML to a whole different level. So we take a look at radar. Radar is actually sensing your vitals. So we have that capability, not shown at this booth today, but for anyone interested, just look up HARMAN ReadyCare. The radar is actually 28 gigahertz. It looks at your vital scans, and it's able to tell a lot what's happening with you as a person.
Excellent. Thank you. So let me try and summarize our panel discussion. So I think, and tell me if I got it wrong. So the panel agrees that connected living is the way forward, and the car is becoming an element of a connected living solution. So I think I was right there, but I believe the panel doesn't agree with me that autonomous cars are still 10 years away. I think you made a good point that maybe some fleet solutions will come in earlier, ride-hailing solutions, and potentially others. From what I'm hearing from you, Serafino, you're saying regulations are going to enable and enhance connectivity in the future. So we should not worry about regulatory aspects so much.
You need to keep an eye.
Keep an eye on it. And I think from what I picked up from you, Eva, you're saying some of these security applications like connected vehicle, smart keys, and all of these solutions will become a lot more safer as we see along. And what I picked up from you, Paul, in particular was that, did I get it right, that OEMs will develop some own solutions and some will use Google Android solutions?
I think Android will be part of the vehicle, but it's really about the evolution of a software-defined vehicle, and it's also about the right 5G architecture.
And that was the last thing I picked up. I think it was unanimous, and I think Cameron mentioned it earlier. 5G is coming, and we will see a lot more 5G use cases in the future. So did I miss anything?
That's good.
No? Good. Okay. Excellent. With that, thank you very much. I'll maybe ask Barbara to just come and say the final words.
Thank you very much for this one. Before I let you go, I actually want to ask a question to the audience, also to the panelists. So how many of you has an electrical car, or electrical vehicle? Okay, the panelists are winning, but very good. How many of you have been sitting on a car which was fully autonomous, or a vehicle that was fully autonomous? We got only 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's not too bad. How many of you would be actually able to, or would you like to use an autonomous vehicle? Okay, we can. So So
there's business to be done.
So there's something to be done. So people are willing to be sitting on an autonomous vehicle. We didn't talk much about AI or how the role plays of AI. There's a lot of AI on this MWC. But yeah, keep an eye, and please go and talk also to our panelists. So they will be here while they also, settle around. So if you want to ask questions, please come along. There will probably, some of them will be available. Others will have the booths, so you can reach them on the booth. But before I want to thank you, you can come on the next session. So now there's a break on the, for lunch. And by the way, if you want to join GSMA, we have a community that talks about smart mobility. So please, also, you can subscribe or come to visit us also on the booth. So we can try to work with you more closely to solve all these issues.